The following is a presentation of the Missouri Sports Network.
Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Missouri Sports Network, MissouriSportsNetwork.com, where everyone has a home field advantage. And as always, presented by Liona, Labor's Local 663, Building, Missouri, and reminding us, hey, drive safely in those work zones. Those folks want to go home to their families as well. Well, it's a great pleasure to welcome in to the show former coach and current author, Shane Matzen. Coach Matzen, thanks, and thank you for being part of the show, and welcome.
Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate all you do with the Missouri Sports Network, and it's an honor to be on with you.
And Coach, we've got a relationship that's ongoing now for more than a decade with your former roles as a high school basketball coach and athletic director. We've dealt with each other on occasion, but let's talk a little bit. You've got this book, Coaching, Is It Worth It? Absolutely. That has now been released. Folks can get it on Amazon.com. The link is scrolling across the bottom of the screen as we're doing this interview. But first, let's just talk about your background in coaching and even going back as a player, because I'm sure that influenced the book as well. Having played for coaches, talk about kind of where you grew up, where you played, went to high school, college, and your coaching background.
Sure. Grew up in mid-Missouri, Eldon, Missouri. And I always tell folks back home, I said, don't tell people you're from Lake of the Ozarks. Tell them you're from Eldon. I said, that's good enough. There's a chapter in my book about that. But yeah, Eldon, Missouri, about a half hour south of Jeff City, 10 miles north of Bagnell Dam. So we always like to say we're the gateway to the Ozarks. Played for the Mustangs, maroon and gold, and very proud. I mean, I was that little kid that was down on the end of the gym and jumping up and down as a little boy. My dad was the PA announcer for football and basketball. Got to sit at the scorers table one night for a state sectional game with Barry Laurie, who made some shots from places I still can't believe. And I'm dating myself here, but I was even the guy that hit the button for the old foul pole that lit up how many fouls people had back in the day. So very special times for me. I'm proud to be a resident and a graduate of Eldon High School. Had a few little NAI offers to go play some basketball afterwards. And when you're 18, man, your ego says, let's go do it, because you still think, you're it. But I always joke, one of the places, and I won't mention it because I don't want to embarrass anyone, but one of the 3 scholarship offers, that institution is now a women's prison. There are some people here in the state that will know where that is. But I knew, though, because of an experience I had growing up, Cloyce Klein was one of my coaches growing up, and he was past president of the Missouri Basketball Coach Association. Coach Klein was my 8th grade coach, and starting that year after that season, and I did it for the next 5 years, he had us coach his 6th grade intramural program. We were the coaches for those kids. And obviously, I was not changing the world with my coaching decisions in that 6th grade program, but I got the hook in my mouth and I bit hard. And I knew that was what I wanted to do. So rather than move on and continue to play, I had a chance to go to the University of Missouri and be a student assistant / manager for the Tigers under Norm Stewart. And we were pretty good back then. That was 86-90. So made the Sweet 16 one year, won 2 Big 8 titles, 2 Big 8 tournament titles. I've got 2 rings over in the drawer over here on the other side here that I'm very proud of. But learned so much from that man and his staff, and just how to do things. And it was one of those deals where, and if we get into stories, I've got a few I can tell, but one of those deals where even at that age, 18 to 22, you realize you're experiencing something that you may not experience again the rest of your life. So I treasure that. As fate would have it, one of the guys that recruited me, and probably the place that I would have gone to play because I loved it in Fayette, Missouri, was Jeff Sherman, who's a Missouri Sports Hall of Famer at Central Methodist University. I got to be his assistant for 2 years, and what an invaluable experience. I mean, you're talking about a premier NAIA program, and we didn't have the staff that we had at the University of Missouri, so I had a lot of responsibility on my plate as a 22-year-old, and I always in debt to Coach Sherman for that experience. moved on from there, got my first head coaching job in Ellsbury, Missouri, which is up north of Troy and St. Charles up in Lincoln County. I was there for 3 years. Learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes. I always tell my alums back then, they're nice to me, but I'm like, man, I wish you'd have known me 10 years later. I learned a few things, but my wife was working in St. Louis. It made a lot of sense for us to get a little closer. And so I ended up at Marquette High School in Chesterfield, Missouri, I'm sitting in Chesterfield right now as we record this. And I was at Marquette for 27 years. Boys head basketball coach for 17 of 18 years. And then the last 9, I was the activities director, because we have more than just sports. I was in charge of fine arts programs and had some great people in those departments as well. And 2 years ago, I retired from all that. So I got a chance to do a little thing called this, and a lot of compilations, a lot of writings over the years from what I did all through those years, and turned it into a book, which I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk about today.
Well, Coach, and again, we're visiting with author Shane Matzen, and retired activities director and high school basketball coach, who's written a book, Coaching. Is it worth it? Absolutely. At what point did you kind of get a bug in your ear, and did someone kind of prompt you? This was and it could have been maybe a close friend, a former player. It could have been your spouse that kind of reached out and said, you ought to write a book. I tell stories, and folks will say, you ought to write a book. Well, I'm not a writer. I'm not even a reader. But well, at what point, and who was kind of the impetus behind kind of putting that bug in your ear to maybe get started writing?
Well, I'll give credit where credit's due. I was the editor of the Maroon and Gold, which is the official newspaper of Eldon High School for 3 years. And Miss Chris Spencer, who's now the superintendent at Cole Camp High School, was my journalism teacher. And for her to lay that responsibility on me at 15 years old and just say, you need to run with this. Wow, that was a big deal. And I thought long and hard about going into journalism, but the coaching bug was a little bit stronger. But I always wrote. And when I got to Central Methodist, and I got a guy like Jeff Sherman, who has given me free reign to do things, and I said, hey, we got this we had a computer in our office, which was a big deal in 1990. And I said, I can type on this thing. He goes, yeah, it's amazing. And so I said, I'm going to do a Run and Eagle report. And let's see if we can get some of our people that are donors. Let's make it worth their while. Let me send them something every month, And so I started doing game summaries of everything that we did for Central Methodist, varsity, JV, the whole works. And when I went on, and when I got to Marquette, and websites started to become a thing, I started writing game summaries for afterwards. And they turned into pretty long stories each night, because I had a chart, play by play of what happened. So I'd come home from games, and first thing I'd do is sit down and make me a pot of coffee, because I knew I was going to be up late. And then I would go through my game film, break it all down, do my coaching duties first. And then I would write the game story, and I would post it to our website. And then, I would save those. That was the yearbook I gave our kids. And as fate would have it, the guy who housed our website at that time called me one day, and he said, this is where I'm jealous of you. He said, hey, Shane, you're doing good work for us. He said, but do you know there's a football coach down in Alabama that's got his own coaches show? He knew what he was doing, because he knew I couldn't resist. So for 4 years, my last 4 years as head coach, I hosted a show that we would record, and I had a lot of guests. I made a trip to Indiana. I had Bobby Plump, the man that made the shot in '54.
Yeah, I've got his cell phone number in my phone.
Yeah, and they based Hoosiers on it. He invited me to his restaurant. I mean, I did a 2-hour-long show. I was in a Hoosier gym. I went down to Puxico the next year. I did a 2-hour show on the history of the Puxico Indians, that I don't think people understand here in Missouri, though they haven't made a movie about it. But the Puxico teams of the late 40s and 50s were our equivalent of the Milan Indians, who were the Hickory Huskers in the movie. So I did a big thing on that. Had Larry Brown, Fran Fraschilla, Norm Stewart. It was a labor of love. And what little money we made from sponsors, I threw right back into our basketball program. So I had some fun with that. And then I wrote for the Missouri Basketball Coaches Association. I was the newsletter editor. Gary Filbert, rest his soul, turned that over to me. And then when I became AD, I knew, and I've made this point on another podcast, but it's worth saying again. I think if you've got anybody out there that's an administrator that has come from being a civilian, which is a teacher, and you make that move to administrator, whether you like it or not, whatever your relationship is, however many friends you have on the staff, when you make that move, there's a wall there. And it's nothing you can do about it. It just is the way it is. And I knew that. And I knew it was okay. But I thought, how can they still see me as a normal human being? Which I tried to do that through my newsletters that I sent them every single week. And I tried to open myself up, make myself human, help them learn from my mistakes. So if you want to add all that up, plus what I've been doing in my new job with Graves Golf out of Edmond, Oklahoma, as a customer relations person, I've got almost 30 years worth of writings, and thank goodness I saved them all. Thank goodness for jump drives. And so coming around to the gist of what you asked me is this. I was out for a walk last spring, and I was listening to one of the podcasts that our company does at Graves Golf. And one of the gentlemen that was on there, his name's Paul Monahan, and he's an author. He is also, we have him, he is our mental game coach at Graves Golf. And Paul had just written a book, and he was talking about it. Well, I love Paul's stuff, so I'm all enthralled, and it hit me. I'm walking down the street, and it hit me. Now, a car almost hit me too, because I wasn't paying attention as I'm crossing the street because I'm all excited. I've got all this. All I have to do is put it together. And so, and I know some people out there, if they're hearing this story for the first time, are probably, wait a second, he just copied and pasted. To an extent, I did, but I only selected things that I think stand the test of time. And the other thing I did in this book, if you get in here and you start reading, I wanted you, if you are a first-time reader of this and you open up something, I wanted you to have some context of what was going on. So what I tried to do, if you couldn't tell what was happening, in italics at the top of each chapter, it's like me tapping you on the shoulder and whispering in your ear, hey, just want to let you know, this was the time period. This was what was going on. This is what I was thinking. So it's somewhat of a diary. And I know you've got a sports audience, which they love this stuff, and there's a lot of sports stuff in there. But the good thing is I've had a lot of people that have purchased this book, got their hands on it, who aren't huge sports people. They're not coaches, but they've said, this resonates. There's stuff in here that has nothing to do with sports. It's just somebody who's going through a life experience, and, either I learned something from it, or I just, oh yeah, I've been there. I know what that's like. So long story short, I tried to be very, very conversational in this book. And I hope as you read it, you feel like we're doing what we're doing right now.
As far as my background as well, being a player, playing at the collegiate level, and then going into the high school level as a high school coach, and then an administrator. As an administrator, I always felt like my coaches were the best teachers. And if I could get them to transform that basketball court or that field into their classroom, they would be so much a better teacher if they use some of that same philosophy. Now, some of it you can't get by with in a classroom. You can't yell at a kid for not blocking out, but you can explain to them and show them things. So I've always felt like the teachers or the coaches that I had that worked underneath me were better, the best teachers in the building. Just because of the nature of what they did and the different people that they had to work with. But tell us a little bit about maybe some of the favorite things as you're looking back, preparing and getting ready to write this book. What were some of the things that you just kind of went, I remember that, man, that was a great time, or and some of them may have been challenging as well. But what are some of those as you're rewriting the book? So to speak. I mean, leading into this, you'd already written 30 books. You just hadn't published them.
Yeah.
Now you've got one that you have to publish. As you look back at some of your research, what are some of the things that really stood out to you?
There were some things in there that I hadn't looked at in a while. And, I don't. I included a story about a young man that we lost when I was at Ellsbury. His name was Derrick Henry, and I guess I should be very honest and say I kind of selfishly wrote it for me because I needed to deal with all my feelings from losing him, and I wrote something that described everything that went on, even down to the details of pushing his casket down the gym floor and seeing the floorboards under my feet as I realize it's the last time I'm going to be there with him. And I'll try not to get choked up, but I wrote that kind of selfishly for me because I needed to get it out of me. And a few years later, Coach Filbert gave me the Missouri Basketball Coach Association newsletter. He said, Shane, I'd like you to take this over. He said, I know you like to write. And I said, I'll do it. I said, but, and I figured out an angle. I said, I've never shown anyone this. I said, I'd like my first article to be this. And I said, Derrick, they have a scholarship fund in Ellsbury for him. And I'd like to include how to donate to that if you wish. But I'd like his story to get out there. Now, Coach Filbert obviously said yes, but I got a hold of his mother, Judy, and I asked her and I showed it to her, and it touched her. And so, obviously I wish Derrick was still with us and that story didn't exist, but she was glad that his memory keeps on. And so that's in there. There's some funny stuff in there. I talk about one day, I went to Aldi's. I had a rare day after being an AD where I could go to the grocery store after school and come home. And I wrote a story about how you put the quarter in the grocery cart to get it out, and you have to take it back to get your quarter back. And I remember there was a lady there with no quarter, and I just gave her my cart, and she thanked me, and I said, pass it forward, because somebody had done that for me last time. So I made a story out of that, and we were going through a rough stretch at school. And I thought, we need to hear something positive, and just, can we be nice in a small situation? Maybe that'll brighten things. You mentioned influences. Coach Stewart. I mean, I got 2 or 3 stories in there about him. And one of them was, there was a day that Coach Stewart, he was a character, and I have a lot of stories about him. But if he held everyone to high standards, including the managers. And so one day I was at the Hearn Center and I was doing my thing. I always got there early so I get everything done. Well, I got caught upstairs on the 2nd floor with something going on. So it slowed me down getting back downstairs with the water and everything I needed. Well, one of my jobs I always did was I've swept the floor too before. Well, I get down there, and who's out there sweeping the floor? Yeah. It's him. And I run out there. Coach, I got you. I got it. And I was ready to get chewed on a little bit. But he said something that stuck with me. He said, Shane, he said, I know you want to be a coach. He said, I'm going to tell you something. The day you get too important to sweep your own floor is the day you need to quit coaching. That resonated with me. And he's the same guy that, he's the person I learned from, that you don't leave a bench dirty, because the custodians are just as important as everybody else in Hilton Coliseum, in the Devaney Center, in the Hearn Center, and heaven forbid, even at Ahern Fieldhouse, they're important. But, or I should say Allen Fieldhouse, Ahern as well, because that's how old I am. We played at Ahern. But that was a big deal. So I took that with me the rest of my career. And I knew that was something that as Marquette or Ellsbury or Central Methodist is portrayed and seen by others, a clean bench is something we could control. We may not be able to win or lose that night, but we could control stuff like that. So, I mean, that gives you a little taste of what's in here. And like I said, most of these are 1 to 2 pages, some of them 3 or 4 chapters that are just little snapshots of things that were going on that I really think people will look at and be like, I've been there. I know. I've seen that. I felt it. So.
And Coach, and again, we're visiting with author and retired coach and athletic activities director. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I've been called worse.
Coach, kind of a 2-part question here. One, you talked a little bit about how it started. And as you look at the book, Number one, did it start chronologically? And then how did it end? Did it end chronologically, or did you get to a point where you felt like maybe it's a Beethoven symphony where it not maybe in chronological order, but here's the crescendo, or is
No,
it chronological?
no, and really this book is not a, hey, here's the beginnings of my career and here's the end of my career. I literally kept this thing snapshot to snapshot to snapshot. I did it in chronological order, but I guess you're going to sense some highs and lows with things. But, I'll give you an example. I mean, I wrote 335 newsletters in my years at Marquette. I didn't include all 335 because, if you do decide to pick up this book and read it, I didn't want you to read how we need to have our trophy cases cleaned because open house is on Thursday. That chapter means nothing to anybody. So I didn't include that kind of stuff. So there were gaps along the way where it was announcement stuff. But it really is a journey from when I first became the newsletter editor of the Missouri Basketball Coach Association through to my time as activities director with what I did with my staff. And now that, there's 3 sections to this book, those first 2, and then there's a new chapter in my life, no pun intended, at Graves Golf. And I'm writing for that audience, which has been really fun for me because, my coaching audience my entire life has been from, we ran a 5th grade feeder program because we don't have middle school sports in St. Louis. So, my audience has been ages 12 to 18. Well, now all of a sudden, I mean, you and I are on at a certain time right now. An hour and a half ago, I was on a Zoom with a 70-year-old talking about his athletic experience. And the one thing I've learned is I don't care if you're 12 or you're 70. Everybody wants to get better. And that to me has been such a gratifying thing. And there's an energy with everybody that they just want to have fun. They want to improve. They want to get better. So it is chronological in that sense, but there are 3 distinct parts to this whole thing that I think you'll see rather clearly. But I don't hide anything. You're going to see me going through some rough times there, and our school going through some rough times. But I just felt like that for me as an author, somebody that people were reading, I wanted them to feel that. I wanted them to know what was going on.
And Coach, as you look back, and I know we've talked a little bit about this off the air, when you first got into it to the time that you decided that it was time to step away from it, I'm talking about the coaching and the activities director, things really changed, not only in Missouri, but in the country, with athletes, with coaches, with parents. What were some of the biggest changes, and maybe even with rules? I mean, heck, you may have started before there was a 3-point line. I don't think you did, but
I played when there wasn't. So yeah,
I did too. But talk about some of those changes, whether they be good or bad. But talk about some of those changes that you have seen that have occurred in the 3 decades that you've been involved.
Oh, I guess we could get real particular or real general. I first one that pops in my head, I love the 1-on-1 in basketball. I think it is one of the true tests of someone's fortitude, not character so much, but basketball skills in a tight situation. And I understand why, we wanted to have the double fouls because you're trying to, keep a team from hurting someone and going crazy. But I sure would have liked to have seen that instead of being 10, I'd like to see it be a 12. I just feel like the 1-on-1 is a lost art that a lot of players don't get to experience anymore. The 30-second timeout has been a big deal, which I was a big supporter of. I'll really touch a hot button here because I know every time I get in a message board, this is a big one.
I know where you're going.
I am not, and I know you're going to let me explain because you're a nice guy, but I am not a proponent of the shot clock, and I'll tell you why. Not because the shot clock is bad. I still go to a lot of games. I mean, my old assistant coach, he's going to be coaching his first game as head coach. He stayed out of that head coach's seat for a long time, but he finally got it. I go to all these games. And one of the things that I've noticed that's changed about the game is ball handling, good and bad. The individual ball handling that goes on in basketball these days is the best it's ever been. I mean, the things that kids can do with the basketball just amaze me. And I was working on those things as a head coach even in 2013. We spent a substantial amount of time because when you got Webster Groves up in your grill, you better work on your ball handling. So we were intense on that. But I don't think what happens these days as much as it did back when you and I were playing for sure is the team ball handling aspect. And what I mean by that is, hey, instead of taking the first open shot we have, which I guess the theory on that is let's take it before we turn it over. But to me, I hate to say this in this term, but it's the first thing I think. I just think that's such a loser mentality. Should we really be doing something to avoid a negative? We should be trying to create a positive. And I know this. If I make you play defense on this side, and this side, you're not going to be as good a defensive team as you were the first side. And I don't see teams do that much anymore. And to get to my point about the shot clock, I challenge anyone. Take a timer into the gym and time the possessions. And let's just throw out a random number. Let's use the late 80s shot clock, 40 seconds in college. I challenge you to see how many shot clock violations there would be. I don't think we need it for that reason. I just think there's no need for it. And right. Everybody says, well, I saw a team hold it for 4 minutes. How many times have you seen that? Very often.
Well, and I'm coming at it from a little bit of a different angle in that I was a small school, athletic director. Mm-hmm. And we were lucky if we got somebody that could keep a score.
Yep.
Let alone now you're going to have to find somebody that's going to run the shot clock. You're going to have to pay for that at those facilities.
Big schools have the same problem now. Since I got out 3 years ago, my successor is a pain in the butt to find the workers for the games. And you can't get mad at anybody. It's their choice. But It's hard.
Right. We would face teams that – the years that we were really good, mm-hmm. we would kind of hold the ball. If they didn't guard us outside, the 3-point line, we weren't going to shoot it because we were already up 40. Yeah. There's no sense in that. But if you force good teams to take a shot every 40 seconds, you're going to see teams lose by 80 and 90 points.
I am a believer, though. This is where I'm not total against. Can a good coach his teams to take good shots within 40 seconds? I firmly believe you can. I'm not saying that. I just sincerely believe that for whatever reason, the emphasis on making a defense defend you in order to get a better shot, I don't think that's emphasized much anymore. I think it's the search for the first good shot, and that's why I don't think the shot clock is really needed.
Very good. Well, Coach, greatly appreciate you being generous with your time here today. Tell everyone the ways they can get the book. I know the Amazon link is scrolling across the bottom of the page right now. Yep. Kind of give us the best way to get a hold of the book and get a copy in your hands.
You bet. And I really appreciate you doing this for me and allowing me to hold this book up for people to see. But the link down below will absolutely get you there. But I understand it's a long link. It is what it is. The best way to go about it is either to just type my name in the search box on Amazon or type that title in. You'll find it. And the great thing is I've gone out of my way. You get a lot of choices when you publish on Amazon. You can do whatever you want. But in my book, I wanted everybody to have access to it. So if you want to get a hardcover, you can. If you want to get a paper book, you can. If you want to get an electronic book, you can. And you probably got a few people out there that pay Amazon a little bit extra so that they can check out books electronically at no charge for their membership fee. I've made it available to those folks as well. And before you think I'm a saint, I get about 2 cents for every 10 words they read. So I am making a little bit off of it, but I wanted everybody to have access to this. So go to Amazon, type in the title or my name, and you'll get access to it. But Guy, you're so nice to let me do this, and it's been a pleasure to get on here with you.
Hey, always, anytime anybody or you need something, hey, just let us know here at the Missouri Sports Network, and we will get it done. We're all about the coaches and the kids, and that's kind of how it got started. This 17 years for me in this business, 14 at ESPN and 3 here with the Missouri Sports Network. And Coach, we've had a long relationship, and I appreciate you jumping on with us, and we will be back after these messages from the Missouri Sports Network.
In the heart of Springfield on historic Walnut Street, just blocks away from the Missouri State campus, Hammons Field, Great Southern Arena, and downtown Springfield. The Walnut Street Inn features newly remodeled rooms, breakfast served daily, and a friendly, accommodating staff. The Walnut Street Inn is also a great venue for private events. Book your stay or get more information at walnutstreetinn.com or call 417-864-6346.
Imagine a bank that goes where you go, creating seamless solutions for every step in your financial journey, allowing you to manage your money the way you want to, with a banking relationship that makes every day extraordinary. Imagine a world full of possibilities, always within reach. Central Bank. We do banking better.
The innocence of youth. Is there anything any better? But soon they'll be in high school and facing all the same challenges you faced. How to make friends, how to fit in, how to be cool. We want our children to have everything they'll need to live fulfilling and productive lives. Make sure the kids in your family are among the more than 290,000